in a fractional perspective and do some executive coaching on top of that. So appreciate joining you again. It's been what, like 18 months since we've done a webinar together?
It's been a while, Ty. So yeah, very glad to have you on board. Hey, as we go through this, please ask questions using the chat. Sharon Godley, who's also with Finalistics, will be monitoring the chat. So let's make this as interactive as possible. All right. And if Ty and I say anything that you're really impressed with, you can do the clapping hands or just let us know. We're always trying to improve our shtick. So let's see if I can get this to advance. There we go. So what's the purpose of this webinar? It's to help you sell more by helping you, one, motivate clients to go faster. You can expand deal size and eliminate the competition earlier. So Ty, a question I have is if you look in the enterprise space, the closure rate's around 30% thereabouts, meaning 70% of the time, deals are being lost to either a competitor and or no decision, right? So what's your take on the role of value proposition? I mean, if 70% you're not winning, how much of that do you think is not having a compelling value proposition? What are your thoughts?
I think it's a pretty big number. If you don't have a good, compelling business value proposition, efficiency does not sell as much as what we would like to think it is. The efficiency is easy to figure out. It's the financial result that we're looking for, the business result that we're looking for. And if that metric plays out, 30%, we close 30% of our deals, then we need 3 times X, 3X or more pipeline. Mm-hmm. And what that means is then we're working on deals that are never going to close. We're wasting a lot of time. I spent 7 years as an individual contributing rep. I never had 3X pipeline. So I can't give you an exact number, but I can tell you that I never had 3X pipeline and I was always beating my number. The number one thing that I was doing was putting a business case into every one of my deals. And so I do think we gained some efficiency by having that business case there.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. Agree completely. All right. So what are the benefits, right? So these are some stats for enterprise sales, and it's for a company with $100 million in revenue. So what it says is, we could increase the closure rate from the median to the better performers. That's 4 million. New customers are 15 million. Cross-sell, upsell, 5 million for a total of 24. So for the companies out there, how much of this would increase your company's valuation? And as an individual contributor, what would it do for your commission? So being a numbers guy, I always like to throw some of those out. Absolutely. Here is one of my favorite quotes. This is from Steve Clancy, the CIO of Georgia Pacific. And I'm not going to read everything, but in my book, Insight-Led Selling, Steve was one of the folks I interviewed. And he said, look, I just went on one page. I don't want a 100-slide PowerPoint deck. And then he's got to go and rearrange it to share it with his friends. So Ty, what is your thought on the one pager?
One of my favorite quotes in history is Mark Twain's quote from a letter that he wrote. He said, if I had more time, I would have written a shorter letter. Mm-hmm. And so I think the point here is to take the time to write the shorter letter, get to the point, help, in Steve's example here, help your buyer make a decision without having to interpret what you give them. Don't give them data, give them information, right? So take the time to go beyond the, hey, here's the efficiency gain part of the conversation and get down to those 1 or 2 metrics that really actually matter, get them on one page, and they can carry that around the organization and sell it without having to do their own work after you're done with your part.
Yeah, and I can't remember. I was talking to maybe Don Garibaldi, who was the senior VP of supply chain at Procter and Gamble for one of their regions, and she said, "Well, make my life easier." And I said, "Well, what do you mean by that?" And this was one of the things she talked about. Don't make me do your work. Just give it to me on that one page, one slide.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So Ty, what's in a value prop?
Yeah, so great question. This slide will back it up. And, the order isn't necessarily perfect in any scenario. So we'll go through these kind of how we're talking about them here. But number one is make sure that you're aligning with what your client or your prospect's goals and strategies are. A value proposition that doesn't speak to something they care about doesn't really do anything for you. And we'll actually talk about that more in a minute. You do have to be able to prove, you need your proof points. You've got to put it in their business's language. We're going to talk about industry specific knowledge today, and that's important. How do you differentiate? Why are you uniquely qualified to solve this problem? And then, that's the business level, but get it tailored into the stakeholders that you're talking to, your economic buyer, your champion. How do they get a win out of this, not just the business? Obviously, the financial benefits, that's the star of this conversation today. It's not efficiency. There's a financial benefit, there's a business benefit, and then you don't do anything in sales without a call to action, right?
Exactly. Exactly. All right, Ty, what is this?
Yeah, so I kind of came up with this a few years ago. In any human relationship or interaction, people are always more interested in hearing what you have to say if you've shown interest in them first. And so one of the things that I do in every kind of initial conversation with a prospect is I draw this picture on a whiteboard if I'm sitting in a room with them, or a piece of paper at lunch, virtually if I have to, when we're doing the world we've lived in since COVID. And what I do is I come with a point of view, and the whole through this conversation, we're gonna populate this at the end. But I come with a point of view of what's going on in their business, and I ask them to engage with me and help me understand what I'm right and wrong about, and what's more important, what's less important. And we draw a picture of their business right now on this piece of paper. And this little 2x2 allows us to rank and strategize on what's important to them, and how what I have to offer relates to what's important to them. So I'm going to explain it more a little later in the webinar, but this is a baseline for a conversation. And the most important thing is I start with this. I start with you, not with me, because you don't care about what I do until I care about what you do first.
Yeah, yeah. I was talking to CFO one time, and he goes, "Hey, you're asking me to spend my money. You're not spending any." So anyway, yeah. Well, let's go to our first poll and think about what Ty shared about what goes into good value prop. And let me see. Let me launch poll number 1. All right. So how business and financial focused are your value props? Excellent, pretty good, making progress, need serious help. So yeah, appreciate if everyone would participate in this. All right, numbers going up. Again, please participate. All right, well, that's almost 80%. So let me end the poll and share the results. Ty, can you see those?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so excellent was 7%, pretty good was 40%, making progress 47%, and somebody says they need serious help. So Ty, what's your take on this? Why isn't there more in the excellent? I mean, they got to be excellent to win nowadays. So what's your take on what's keeping folks from creating these excellent value props?
Well, the first answer is sometimes there are buyers coming to you, and you go to the ones that don't require this, right? They've already got a project, and they've been established, and they've built their own business case, and it's easy, right? But the answer really to the question is what we're talking about today is hard. It's not natural. It makes us feel like we have to do extra work. And in sales, we want to do the least amount of work possible to get the deal. Now, the funny thing is, if you do this work, you will do a lot less work proving your value throughout the sales cycle, right? So doing this work up front, it's kind of like working out and preparing for a game. If you prepare properly, the game itself goes a lot smoother, and that's how I would relate what we're talking about today here. If you get better at this, your sales cycles will get shorter, and the energy you have to put into them to prove your technology or your service will get shorter if you've got a value prop that's singing to the right people.
Yeah, let's get the participants involved. Please use the chat. What are your thoughts? Why well, the person said excellent. I like to hear how was that journey? What are you all doing differently? And then for others, I like some insights on why aren't there more excellent or at least pretty good numbers up here. So what we got is over half the people saying making progress or need serious help. So please use the chat. Sharon will be monitoring it, but like some insights on, what's stopping folks from being at that excellent to pretty good. And then, what are some of the insights on how you get there. So again, please use the chat. Sharon, is anyone chatting?
No one. Oh, yes, we have some right now. This from
Sharon, you're
didn't
cut.
say excellent. I think we do a super.
Yeah, let
Can you hear
see.
me?
Yeah, you're cutting in and out.
That might be why I had technical difficulties. Is that better?
Yeah. Okay. So
Okay.
yes, that's better. So Karen
Okay.
says, I didn't say excellent. You were a decision link customer. You can't say it. Anyway, I think we do a super job on the financial side, but we can do a better job on the qualitative and the differentiated side. Good insights. All right. Anything else? Let's see. Neil, there we go. Not needed to get through initial and primary buyer. This is needed at stakeholder, executive director level. Yeah, good insights. All right. Anyone else?
I'd like to comment on what Neil posted there really quick before we move, just really quickly. You're right on that. A lot of times, that they're not as financially focused. The challenge becomes you need to have that conversation early in the sales cycle, because when you get to the economic buyer, they're going to be hesitant to share the data with you, the information with you to build that business case, because they know why you're doing it. You're doing it to defend your pricing, right? So starting it early, even if it's not necessary early, will help you improving it later when you get up higher in the chain.
Yeah, Pam's got an interesting comment. Our team has brand new technology, an area of business process that really hasn't had technology solutions before. It's interesting. I was on a call just yesterday, well, evening, I guess, and similar situation. A company's bringing out this technology for testing food and stuff, and they're automating the process completely. And so it's not been deployed. But what we did is say, okay, well, let's look at the typical cost of testing, right? And we can figure out how much labor, there'll be less, a lot of labor play. And so even though it's not been tested, is you typically can get some insights into, well, here's the area it's going to impact. And what I like to do, Pam, is say, well, what if it's just a 1% improvement? How much is that worth? All right. Okay, well, let's keep going. So here's our case study. We've got an organization that provides IoT and other solutions that help with digital transformation. You can't have a presentation without digital transformation being mentioned. And what they do is they help improve operating cost efficiencies and other things by better management of assets and manufacturing, distribution, logistics. And Stanley Black & Decker is used for illustrative purposes only. All right. So these are 7 steps for developing customer insights and laying the foundation for a value prop. So, as we talked about, you need to know their goals. I always like to know, how are they compensated? Do you know their industry? How are they performing financially? My favorite. Who are the stakeholders? What are their initiatives? What are their KPIs? So you got to tailor the pitch. And then finally, how do your solutions map to all of this? What's the financial benefits? And then creating a point of view. So let's get started. And so here's Stanley Black & Decker. This is out of their annual report investor presentation. So here's some of their goals. They say, we want to grow revenues 2 to 3%. We want to expand profit margins. Well, if you can help them with the utilization of their assets, the logistics costs, the manufacturing costs, that's going to improve gross profit margin. And they have this thing called cash flow return on investment. Well, what are some of their strategies? One of their strategies is improving operational efficiency. So, if you think about it, Ty, why is it so important to have this information about a client if they're publicly traded?
This helps you understand what's driving the whole organization, right? And this has been kind of sales 101 for a long time. Go read the annual report and pull out these strategic objectives. And I think where we're going next is kind of how you get better at capturing these things and putting dollars to them. But another thing that we want to make sure we're considering here is what's in the annual report is your economic buyer's key performance indicator, right? That's what they're going to get paid on. We're going to talk about compensation in a minute, but we also want to consider, how does this impact your economic buyer, like we talked about, also your champion, because you need to win for the business, you need to win for your economic buyer,
Yep.
and you need to win for your champion. And understanding at the corporate level what those goals are, you've got to understand how they flow down through the organization, the people that you're building relationships with to go and win the deal.
Exactly. And we're always doing these surveys, and we found that only about 25% of sales organizations do a good job of aligning their solutions with the goals. I think part of it is because they just don't know the goals.
Yeah.
All right, now one of my favorite topics, executive compensation. So this is how the senior folks at Stanley Black & Decker get compensated. So Ty, what are your thoughts on knowing executive comp?
If you know executive comp, you know what motivates us, right? Salespeople are long famous for being coin operated, but the truth is we are all somewhat coin operated. We go to work every day to make money for our families, set up our retirements, things like that. And a large part of an executive compensation is based on performance. And if we know what triggers are being pulled, then we know what levers that we have to help them pull. And the same is true as you work your way down. It's easy to find out what executive comp is because it gets published in a publicly traded company. You need to understand that for the lower level people you're working with as well. What are their incentives? What are their career motivations? What does this mean to them to be successful in this particular moment? And all that has to fall into this ultimate value proposition.
Yeah, and folks ask me all the time, well, am I supposed to go up to Ty and say, hey, I know you're compensated on adjusted earnings per share and cash flow and all that? I say the answer is no, but in our conversations, we can say, Ty, we're here to help your performance and improve areas like free cash flow, gross profit margin, et cetera. By the way, you can also use this when you're putting together like a business case. We always do, here's the cash flow benefit, those type of things. Well, once you have all that data, you can turn it into whatever metric they're being compensated on to make it even more personal. All right, Sharon, do we have someone in the chat?
Yes, we do. Alyssa, how can you apply this framework to government sales motions, and any suggestions for getting info from non-public info? I assume in discovery.
Yeah, let me take the non-public, and then Ty, I'm going to give you the tough one, government. So here's my suggestion for private companies is, you're right, they don't publish a lot of stuff. You're lucky if you know their revenues. So go to a couple of companies in their industry and see what they're talking about. What are their executive comp? What are their goals and strategies? And then when you're talking to them, say, look, typically I would have done this, but there's no data on you all. So here's some of the things I found in your industry. Does that resonate with you? Ty, what's your thought about government?
No, you're spot on the non-public, right? You've got to understand the bigger industry. But on the government side, I've sold to government, public entity type of organizations, the states as well, education. There are still management by objective, MBO, OKR type of goals that exist inside of that. Because basically what happens is the budget gets set at a legislative level, like in the government. But then the people that are assigned that budget have a performance that they have to achieve. And so while it's not earnings per share and while it's not profit margin, they still have that underlying compensation that's tied to their performance. And it's a lot harder to find, no doubt. If it's not an annual report, you've got to go do some digging. Now, the beauty is with the advent of all of our social channels, a lot of times you can find it on LinkedIn because someone's posting about it, or the company posting about their objectives and what they're doing and what they're interested in, and publishing their strategies. So you have to dig a little deeper now. And AI actually can be very helpful in that, in crunching all that information together. There's a few products out there that can help you crunch that data as well.
Good. Yeah. I know this was a number of years ago, but there was actually a scorecard for the federal government. They broke up into 4 different areas and all that stuff, but it's been a while since I looked at it. Okay, so let's take a look at industry insights. And I'm not going to go through all these. You will get the deck. So I just like giving examples. So Ty, why is it so important that you have these industry insights?
You've got to be able to talk to your potential buyer, right, in their language, and you've got to understand what's going on in their industry right now. Like we like to talk about, are we in a recession or not right now? it's an easy debate to get started. At our last partner meeting at Tech CXO, I was in a room full of CFOs in a group breakout, and there was a whole discussion about what, actually the joke was said that economists have successfully projected 9 out of the last 2 recessions. But the thing is, each industry is going through its own economic cycle. I shared with Stephen when we were preparing for this, I had one of the best years in my career from a software selling perspective in 2008 when the financial markets were crumbling. So you need to understand what's going on in a specific industry that you're selling into. And if you're lucky enough to sell into multiple industries, you have to become a quasi-expert in each one of them so that you can talk A, in their language, and B, in their current economic conditions. They're either expanding and investing in innovation, or they're trying to keep the wheels on the bus through a tight time. And you need to understand that so you know which direction your business case needs to go.
Yeah, and I was talking to a friend of mine. He's in supply chain. He's in distribution logistics, to be specific. And so a vendor comes in and starts using manufacturing terms, and he goes, "Where? Do you know what business we're in?" So yeah, and you don't. By the way, you don't have to be an industry expert. You just have to have kind of a higher level understanding of what's executives are focused on in the industry. So Sharon, do we have another chat?
No, Karen shared her experience for Alyssa, though. So it's an interesting sharing with Alyssa. Would you
Okay.
like to read
No,
that?
that's okay. Karen's always sharing. Thank you
Okay.
so much, Sharon. Okay, let's take a look at, all right, one of my favorite topics, right? Financial performance. And we're looking at them, and they've averaged about 3%. In fact, it's even lower in their most recent fiscal year. And relate it back to their goals. Remember, they said revenue growth at 2 or 3 times the market, where they're not close there. And then from a profitability perspective, that's dropping. And so what we find is that it's really easy to find this in their 10K. What happened? It was a 7% decline, right? And it was driven by a 1% increase in price and a 7% decrease in volume. Then there's some other things they talk about. So, Ty, you know where I'm going with this. Why is it so important to know their financial performance? And I want to add to that, how do you present this in the meeting? So why is it important, and your insights on what do you do with this when you're meeting with them?
Yeah, so one, why is it so important? It gives you perspective. Kind of like what I was saying a while ago, at the industry level, what's going on now in the company, what's actually going on for them. One of the clients that I have, actually, a couple of folks that are on this webinar, is in the retail footwear and apparel, the fashion industry space. Overall, you could define the macroeconomic conditions of that industry right now, but we have customers who are growing and expanding and innovating, and we have customers who are just holding on, right, and making sure that they're keeping their business on track and doing as much as they can with the people that they have today, or the resources they have today. And so you need to understand the macroeconomic condition of the industry. The micro helps you understand how this business is performing inside of their industry. Are they having market share taken from them, or are they taking market share? And that gives you again the perspective to have that conversation with them. And then the second thing that you asked there, like, how do you present it? I'm a pretty direct person, always have been. Anybody that knows me knows I will kind of just go right on the nose with most things. However, if this is not a good story and it's a little bit of a sensitive subject, you do need to think about the psychology of how you present. You don't come in and say, "Man, you guys suck." You need to come in and say, "I see that you are." If I look at your corporate objectives, I'll look at your executive compensation, what's going on in the industry, what's going on with you. What I see is that you have an opportunity to improve here, as opposed to, "Man, you guys are really struggling." And positive language is important. So be careful how you present a story that may not be the best, because what you're presenting to them is how to help them turn the ship around.
Yeah, and what I always share with people, you don't have to show this graph or wherever you get your numbers and that. Just know that, hey, their revenues are trended downwards, their profitability is trended downwards. Probably don't want to bring that up, but let's say their revenues were going up, or their revenues were going up faster than their peers. I mean, I have no problem saying, "Hey, I did my homework. Notice that revenues are trending upwards, but compared to your peers, you're still lagging behind a little bit." Hey, executives are tough. right?
Yep.
They expect straight talk. They don't want it to be this flowery stuff. So anyway, do we have a question? Let's see.
No, I think
No, no
Alyssa
chat.
and
Okay.
Aaron, yeah.
All right. So wait a minute. So now when you're looking at their finance performance, focus on the one, maybe two areas that your solutions can impact. So remember, in this case, we're selling IoT services and technology. And so that's going to help them expand their gross profit margin because it's going to help them in terms of managing those direct costs like labor, materials, overhead. So the only takeaway from this one is, focus on those one or two areas of performance that you can help them with, they're focused on. And this example, they had a stated goal of expanding gross profit margin. And by the way, they're also compensated on it. Okay. Not sure what that is about. All right. Now, what we have to do, buying groups are expanding. In fact, real quick, let's use the chat. Share with us what's like the average number of stakeholders you guys have in the deals that you're moving along. What are some average numbers? I mean, I know what Gartner says. I want to hear what you got to say. Again, please use the chat. Sharon, is anyone chatting? Let's see.
There we go.
Yes. Neil, 3 to 5, Karen, 7 to 9,
Wow. Wow.
Kathy, 6 to 8.
Woo. Okay. Well, if you're not doing this, this is very important. So what you need to do is say, okay, who are we talking to? Who are the real decision makers? Come up with, what are their initiatives? And, some of that is in the public domain. Some you can just say, well, I know the industry, what they're up to. Identify those that you can help with, so you can use this in your value prop. And then how are they compensated, right? What are the KPIs they're looking at? So got to tailor the message around, they're both supporting increased gross profit margins in this example. But if you look at this, manufacturing and distribution are up to a lot of different things. So Ty, real quick, sorry, go back. Your thoughts on tailoring the message?
Yeah, you got to know who those 5 to 10 people are, right? I kind of use the range that we just got on the chat. And you've got to understand what each one of them cares about, and not just professionally, but personally. And again, this isn't easy. This is hard work, and you can't shy away from the hard work. How do you learn that stuff? You build relationships. Because you're not going to find that published. You will find, you can hunt around on LinkedIn and you can say what kind of roles are they hiring right now, what kind of roles are they getting rid of right now, and you can infer. But you're going to have to truly build strong champions and good relationships with these stakeholders so that you can give them a value proposition that they can use. The best outcome for your value proposition is they use it as their own internally while they go and champion your cause, right? That's the whole point of building a champion. And I said earlier, you got to have a result for the business. You've got to have a result for the economic buyer. You've got to have a result for your champions. And, that's using medic terminology. And we used to say there's only one champion and there's only one economic buyer. Well, the truth is there's usually only one economic buyer, and it's a lot of times the CFO, but there are a lot of champions now. I think that's what's changed in the world. And part of that is because people are a little bit scared to make a decision that could impact their career without some level of consensus being built. But with good financial metrics, you can shrink that buyer group a little bit because you can get more people confident in the outcome without having to have such a large group of stakeholders.
Great. Sharon, more chat?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Hey, so I want to stop here because, again, we're always doing surveys, and we found that only about 25% of sales organizations say they do a good job about tailoring the message. So help us. I mean, what if you're doing that, that's great. What's some of the secret sauce? And then, if you're not, or let's say your friends aren't, what's stopping them? I mean, you can get this information, but what is stopping folks from tailoring the message instead of one size fit all? So again, please use the chat. Any responses? Okay.
Neil says joint multi-stakeholder meetings.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I think we were talking about that, Ty, and you were saying, call them ahead of time. right? To find out what they're looking at. So real quick, now we got to get into the financial benefits, and you can do this kind of thing throughout the sales process, right? Because early on, I can tell you, having worked with a lot of executives, well, give me some idea of how much this is going to be worth. Now, at this point, the only thing you know, you're going to be wrong, so don't come up with these crazy numbers, but then you can translate this into, and not go all the details. Oh, well, if we could achieve this, that would help improve your gross profit margin. Okay, and I know that's one of your goals, et cetera. So, Ty, what's your thought on this power of one, or some, and then obviously modify it with your own experiences as you go through it. But what are your thoughts on using something like this earlier in the sales process?
When you use that one number, or that one or two at the most metrics, and you know that they're impactful metrics to the people that you're talking to, you can say, hey, it's going to be a 0.7% increase, a 1% increase. By the way, a 1% increase is a huge number in the companies that we're talking about right now. The next question is going to be how or why, right? How do you do? What are you doing? And so you do yourself a favor by leading with the number to get their attention, and immediately knowing how to answer that follow-on question of, but how does that work? Because everybody says they can make my top line get better, right? That's an easy statement to make. It's a difficult statement to defend. And so that's where that context piece comes into play. And you've got to be sharp on that answer to the follow-on question.
Yep. That's what I had the pleasure of working with Tom Shoey, who was the CFO at Walmart, and I got to visit beautiful Bentonville. But yeah, he always said, Stephen, tell me the how and then the how much. Or if you tell me the how much, you better have a really good how to follow that up. Okay, Sharon, any more chats?
Ben had a response to your earlier question. Specifically, agency scorecard metrics can include citizen engagement, customer service type KPIs, digital transformation, and then operational efficiencies.
Good insights, Ben. All right, so let me do this. Let me go back to poll number 2, launch. All right, so the question is, in your value proposition, do you link your solution's benefits to financial goals? Right? So the question is, in your value proposition, do you link your solutions to financial goals? All right, so I appreciate if everyone were to participate, please. All right, I'm going to end poll in the interest of time. Share results. So no, this is pretty good. I love that. 60% of folks saying often, and 43% saying sometimes, and fortunately no one said not very often. So yeah, it's just so important. That's one of the key reasons why these companies are investing in your solutions. Okay, let me get rid of this. All right, so, and you guys are going to get these slides, so I'm not going to go through all of this. It's just a summary of what we found. And what I want Ty to do is, now, with that information we gathered, Ty, explain how you use this. And I love it when you say, yeah, it's one of the first things I start off with is, this 2x2. So walk us through this, please.
So I mentioned you lead off with this in the conversation. You start with this before you pitch who you are and what you do and all those kinds of things. You lead off with, here's what I understand about your business and the competing objectives that you have, that you're working through. What you'll notice here is all of the information that was collected through the business case, the use case that we put together here. I pulled out what are the top 3 strategic things, what are things that the executives are being measured on it, and there was a risk section. And so I pulled out the top 3 of each of those. More than 3, this slide gets a little busy. Here's what you're going to find. You're going to find that traditionally everything trends to the edges of this graph. There is no company initiative that is innovative and protects the customer experience and increases revenue and increases profit. Nothing will ever land in the middle of this. But what I can tell just by visually looking at this is they're not innovating a lot right now. They're trying to improve their revenue through efficiencies. They're trying to improve their profit margin through efficiencies. This is where their focus is right now. It's one of the questions I would ask is I would say, what about innovation? Where does that sit in your world right now? Is that something that's so far out because we're trying to fix other things? Or, I would ask that question just to engage where we're at. Here's the trick though. If you're 40% right with your assumptions on this slide, you will start a conversation that could go on for hours if you allow it with the right kind of executive. And so the goal is not to be perfectly correct when you present your point of view here. The goal is to be 40% right. And if you're 40% right, the ego kicks in. And what people do is they lean in and they say, yeah, that's right, that's wrong. You got this kind of in the wrong place. And this is more important to me. And that's not. And then what you find, and this is an important point I want to make. What you find here is if what you're selling does not align to one of the key strategic objectives for the company, you can find ways to say, but if I added value in this area over here, and you could take that efficiency of that value and apply it to something that is more important to you, would that be a way for us to engage together? So now, even if you're not a top priority, like Pam said a while ago, we're selling a new technology that to solve a problem that no one knew that there was a technology to fix. It's not in the budget right now. Let's go find something that we can attach the efficiencies we gain into that other strategic objective. This is one of the conversations, like I said, can go on for hours with the right kind of executive, and you get all the insight you need. When you finish this slide, you know exactly what you have to do to get them to buy something from you that's going to give them the business outcome they really need. And so that's why I lead with this, and I use it throughout the entire sales cycle to come back to and reference as we work together towards a deal.
So Ty, if I understand you're saying right out of the starting blocks, you're using this 2x2, filling in the best you can, and then getting input from the client executive.
And I've never had it produce a bad conversation. I've been using it since 2016. And I've never had it produce a bad conversation. People always lean in and engage. Now, you get different levels of honesty, right? Of how much trust they have in you, but you always will gain some insight and some direction on which way your business case should go so that you can win in their eyes.
Excellent, excellent. I want to stop. Any questions on this, your business competing objectives? And any questions for Ty? I love this. Any questions? No?
I explained it so well. Everybody's an expert at it.
I know, they're just in shock and awe, but yeah, reach out to Ty. We're going to have his contact information if you got more questions around this. I think this thing is brilliant. All right, so I'm not going to go through all this, but based upon what we saw, here's the yep. Oh, someone liked it. Roberto, you have a question? Nope, we're just like, oh, he liked it. I said, raise your hand. So you're going to get a copy of this, but these are the 7 steps. And what I did is I just came up with, what would you possibly say? And if you put all this together, it is on one slide or one page. And then you'll like my call to action, sign the contract. Yeah, you got to do that. So, just you can use this step by step, look at Ty's. So Ty, let me ask you, any parting shots for our friends out there? Any parting insights for our friends out there before we wrap things up?
Now, I think joining this webinar and, like Karen, I know we've talked in the past, by being here, you're in the top the top percentage of sales professionals in general, because not a lot of people go to the trouble to learn the finance side of the business. Like it's not something we go learn as sales professionals. But what I can tell you is that it will actually impact your win rate and your performance, your stack ranking. We all like to look at the stack ranking as salespeople. Do the homework and learn the financial side of the business. And what you're doing is you're talking at a higher level than your competition. You could have a lesser product and have a better value proposition and win, right? And I think the easiest example of that is a couple of big software or a couple of big OS companies from the 1980s, Apple and Microsoft, right? We could argue that all day long. One had a better value proposition, one had a better product, and we kind of know what the results of both were over time. So, understand that the financial result, the business result is the most important thing that you're talking about with your customers.
Great, great, great. And your gift, your takeaway for listening to Ty and I for the last 45 minutes. One, you use the QR code and download a copy of my Amazon bestseller, Insight-Led Selling. And one of the chapters in there is on finance performance, but the different chapters cover just about everything we talked about today, but obviously in a lot more detail. So please, please, please feel free to download the book. Also, you want to get started is that you can also request the Finlistics company report for a publicly traded company. And what that's going to give is here's our financial performance, here's common goals in the industry, here's common ways that people get compensated in the industry. So please, 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 you'll receive a copy of this. If you using the QR codes now, that's great. If not, you can later. You'll also receive a link to the recording. And let's connect. So there's my email. There's the hyperlink for my LinkedIn. Here's all of Ty's information. So, stay in touch. And we're doing stuff like this all the time. I know, Ty, that you're very involved in these things. Finlistics is always sharing information with folks. So please, please, please stay in touch. And with that, Ty, thank you so much for being on today. And I want to thank everyone else that attended this webinar. So good, happy selling.
Thanks, Stephen. Thanks, everybody.
Okay. Let me keep getting these crazy messages. All right. Thank you, Karen, Ted. Ben shared also some information about federal government.
Yep.
All righty then. Well, listen, Ty, thank you so much. This was great. Let me stop the recording.